The stench of the Zadrix trading station hung in the air like a physical entity. Shaw wrinkled his nose as he shouldered his way through the crowded corridors. 3 weeks had passed since he'd lifted the living moss sculpture from the Calixian embassy, and he was still lying low, waiting for the heat to die down. The station hummed with life, engines whirring, voices haggling in a dozen different languages, and the occasional burst of laughter or angry shout cutting through the din. Shaw kept his head down, hood pulled low over his features. The security patrols had increased lately, and while his face wasn't plastered across every screen yet, it was only a matter of time. "Just one drink," he muttered to himself, turning into the narrow passageway that led to the Lucky Drop, a dive bar tucked into the tail section of the station. One drink, then back to the ship. The bar's interior was dimly lit, a blessing that hid both the grime on the surfaces and the identities of its patrons. Shaw slid onto a stool at the far end of the counter, back to the wall, eyes scanning the room out of habit. The bartender, a thoraxian with 4 arms moving in perpetual motion, nodded in recognition. "Vichy Amber," Shaw said, sliding across a credit chip. "The good stuff." The thoraxian grunted, reaching beneath the counter for a dusty bottle. The amber liquid caught what little light there was as it splashed into the glass. Shaw took an appreciative sip, savoring the burn that traced its way down his throat. 3 sips in, the commotion started. A hulking Derviki male, easily 7 feet tall with mottled green skin and tusks protruding from his lower jaw, was dragging 2 figures through the bar. Shaw's initial instinct was to look away. Trouble was the last thing he needed. But something about the way the 2 smaller forms moved caught his attention. They weren't being led. They were being hauled. Their wrists were bound with crude energy cuffs that left angry red marks on their pale blue skin. Diary, Shaw realized with a start. He hadn't seen members of their species this far out on the rim before. They were known for their intelligence and cultural achievements, not for frequenting places like Zadrix. "Who wants them?" the Derviki slurred, yanking the chain that connected the 2 females' restraints. "Good price. Embassy rejects. Train. Trained for cultural exchange." Shaw stiffened. The diary looked terrified, their large dark eyes darting around the room. The taller one, with intricate white markings trailing from her temples down her neck, stood slightly in front of the smaller one, a protective stance that told Shaw all he needed to know about their relationship. 2,000 credits, the Dervaki shouted, swaying on his feet. "Or best offer, need quick sale." A few patrons looked up with interest. A Moldovan trader in the corner straightened, yellow eyes narrowing with calculation. Shaw knew that look. He'd seen it at auctions for supposedly legitimate artifacts that everyone knew had been looted from their homeworlds. Shaw's hand tightened around his glass. It wasn't his problem. He had enough troubles. A stolen artwork hidden in his cargo hold, 3 different bounty hunters potentially on his trail, and barely enough fuel to make it to the next system. Taking on more complications was the last thing he needed. The diary with the markings caught his eye. There was no pleading there, no desperate hope, just a dignified resignation that somehow cut deeper than any tearful appeal could have. "I'll give you a drink," Shaw heard himself say, raising his glass of Vichy Amber. The Dervaki turned, bloodshot eyes struggling to focus. "What you say?" Shaw stood, holding the glass higher. "This, for both of them." The bar went quiet. The Derviki looked at the glass, then at Shaw, and let out a bellowing laugh. "You joke! This valuable merchandise! Embassy trained!" Shaw shrugged, taking another deliberate sip. "It's Vichy Amber, the real thing, not the synthetic swill they peddle on the lower decks. Worth more than 2,000 credits to the right buyer." He gestured to the bartender. "Tell him." The thoraxian nodded reluctantly. "It's the authentic product. Pre-collapse vintage." The Dervaki's eyes widened slightly, his gaze now fixed on the amber liquid. "Plus," Shaw added, lowering his voice, You're so drunk you can barely stand. How far do you think you'll get before station security notices you dragging two-bound diary through the corridors? The Galactic Cultural Exchange has strict regulations about their diplomatic trainees. Uncertainty flickered across the Derviki's face. Shaw pressed his advantage. Take the drink. Walk away with something valuable instead of a ticket to a labor colony. For a tense moment, Shaw thought the Derviki might attack him. Then, with surprising speed for one so intoxicated, the alien lunged forward and snatched the glass from Shaw's hand. Deal, he grunted, downing the expensive liquor in one swallow. He shoved the chain toward Shaw and turned away, already focusing on how to spend his unexpected windfall. Shaw caught the chain before it could yank the diary off their feet. He met their eyes, the taller ones wary, the smaller ones wide with disbelief. Come on, he said quietly. Let's get out of here before he changes his mind. Neither spoke as he led them through the back corridors of the station, taking a circuitous route to Docking Bay 17, where his ship, the Skylark, waited. Only when the airlock closed behind them did Shaw finally turn to address them properly. I'm Shaw, he said, activating the control panel to unlock their restraints. The energy cuffs fell away with a soft click. And this isn't a purchase. You're free to go whenever you want. I just couldn't leave you with that drunken slaver. The taller diary rubbed her wrists, her dark eyes studying him intently. I am Nera, she said finally, her voice melodic despite the underlying tension. This is my sister, Tally. The smaller diary nodded, staying close to her sister's side. Thank you, Tally said, the words careful and precise, as if rarely used. Why help? Shaw turned away, uncomfortable with the directness of the question. Let's get the ship moving first. You can rest in the crew quarters. We'll figure out where to take you once we're clear of the station. He felt their eyes on his back as he moved to the cockpit. What had he gotten himself into? The Skylark was a small vessel, designed for a crew of two, but modified by Shaw to be operated by a single pilot. The living quarters were cramped but functional, with a tiny galley, 2 sleeping pods, and a common area that doubled as cargo storage. It wasn't much, but it was home, and more importantly, it was fast and difficult to track. As the engines hummed to life, Shaw plotted a course away from Zadrix, avoiding the main trade routes. He hadn't planned to leave so soon, but the situation had changed. If the Derviki sobered up and realized the true value of what he'd traded away, or worse, if he'd stolen the diary from someone powerful, there could be complications. Once they were safely in transit, Shaw found the sisters huddled together in the common area, speaking softly in their native language. They fell silent as he entered. Are you hungry? He asked, moving to the galley storage. I don't have much, but there's protein packs and some instant noodles. Noodles, Tally echoed, the unfamiliar word bringing a slight tilt to her head. Shaw pulled out 3 packets. Not exactly gourmet, but they're hot and filling. As he prepared the simple meal, Nera's voice came from behind him. You have not asked what we are worth. Shaw turned, frowning. You're not cargo. The Derviki acquired us from a diplomatic transport, she continued, as if he hadn't spoken. We were en route to the Galactic Cultural Exchange when our ship was attacked. We are trained in multiple languages, artistic traditions, and diplomatic protocols. Our market value. Stop, Shaw interrupted, more sharply than he'd intended. There is no market value. You're people, not merchandise. A long silence followed. Tally whispered something to her sister in their language, and Nera responded with a short shake of her head. Here, Shaw said more gently, handing them each a steaming cup of noodles. Eat something. We can talk after. They examined the food with cautious curiosity. Tally was the first to try it, her eyes widening slightly at the taste. They ate methodically, neither wasting a drop of the broth. Where will you take us? Nera asked when they had finished. Shaw leaned against the counter. Where do you want to go? Is there somewhere safe? Family, maybe? The sisters exchanged glances. We were selected for the exchange program at age 7, Nera explained. Our family surrendered all rights. We belonged to the program. And now? Shaw prompted. Tally looked down. Defective merchandise. Failed mission. Shaw felt a surge of anger that surprised him with its intensity. You're not merchandise, he repeated. And you didn't fail anything. Your transport was attacked. That's not your fault. The Derviki said others from our ship were sold at higher prices, Nera said, her voice carefully neutral. We were less desirable because we refused to be separated. Shaw ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what he was hearing. The Galactic Cultural Exchange had always been presented as a prestigious diplomatic program, a way for species to share knowledge and art. The thought that it might be little more than glorified trafficking turned his stomach. You can stay here until we figure something out, he said finally. The sleeping pods are small, but they're comfortable enough. I'll take the chair in the cockpit. You trust us on your ship? Tally asked, genuine surprise in her voice. Shaw shrugged. I don't have much worth stealing, and something tells me you wouldn't know how to pilot this bucket anyway. A ghost of a smile touched Nera's lips. You would be surprised at what we know. Despite her words, both sisters seemed exhausted. Shaw showed them how to operate the sleeping pods and the small sanitation unit before retreating to the cockpit. As the stars streaked by outside the viewport, he questioned his own judgment. He was a smuggler, not a rescuer. His expertise lay in identifying valuable artifacts and moving them discreetly across borders, not in dealing with traumatized aliens. And yet, something about the dignity in Nera's eyes, the quiet resilience of both sisters, had struck a chord. Perhaps it was because he recognized fellow survivors when he saw them. Shaw sighed, settling into the pilot's chair. One day at a time. Get clear of Zadrix. Make sure they were safe, and then figure out the next step. He'd dealt with worse complications. He was almost asleep when the proximity alarm jolted him upright. A patrol vessel was scanning the area, its signal pattern matching galactic enforcement. Shaw quickly adjusted their course, dropping the Skylark into the shadow of a nearby asteroid field. The patrol passed by without incident, but the close call left him alert and uneasy. It wasn't just his own illegal activities he had to worry about now. If what the sisters said was true, there might be powerful people looking for them as well. Shaw's hand hovered over the weapons control panel before dropping away. He'd figure it out. He always did. Morning aboard a spaceship was an arbitrary concept, but Shaw had maintained an Earth-standard cycle throughout his years in space. He woke stiff and irritable after his uncomfortable night in the chair, only to find Tally already awake and examining the ship's systems with evident curiosity. Good morning, she said, pronouncing the greeting carefully. Your stabilizer connection is loose. Shaw blinked. What? Tally pointed to a panel behind the navigation controls. There. Makes the noise when you change direction. You can tell that just by listening? She nodded, her expression serious. Diary hearing, very sensitive. Shaw moved to check the panel, and sure enough, when he removed the cover, he found a stabilizer connection that had worked itself loose during their hasty departure. How did you know where to look? Studied ship schematics. Part of training. Tally handed him a tool from the nearby kit before he could ask for it. Diplomatic envoys must understand transportation methods. Shaw took the tool, reassessing his assumption that the sisters would be helpless aboard his ship. What else did they teach you? Many things, she replied, watching as he tightened the connection. Languages, customs, technologies, sciences, arts. Nera better at people things. I better at machine things. Useful skills, Shaw commented, replacing the panel cover. Tally tilted her head. For merchandise. Shaw straightened. meeting her gaze. Is that how you see yourself? It is what we were, she said simply. Now, I don't know. Before Shaw could respond, Nara emerged from the sleeping area, her white markings seeming to glow against her blue skin in the ship's artificial light. The ship is not being pursued, she stated, glancing at the scanner readouts. Not that I can detect, Shaw agreed. But that doesn't mean we're in the clear. I need to know more about who might be looking for you. Nara's expression remained neutral, but Shaw noticed how she moved closer to her sister. The exchange program would report us missing, but they would not expend significant resources on recovery. We were mid-tier candidates. And the Derviki? A opportunistic thief, she said dismissively. He attacked our transport for its cargo, not specifically for us. When the exchange refused to pay a ransom, he sought to recoup his losses however he could. Shaw nodded slowly. So the immediate threat is low. Unless you are concerned about the living moss sculpture in your cargo hold, Nara added casually. The one from the Calixian embassy. Shaw froze. How did you... Your cargo is emitting a specific pheromone pattern, Tally explained. Calixian living art has a distinct biochemical signature. And, Nara continued, you match the description of a thief who stole such a piece 3 weeks ago. The reward is substantial. Shaw's hand moved instinctively toward the weapon at his hip. And you plan to collect it? Nara's dark eyes met his steadily. You traded a glass of liquor for our lives, Shaw. We are not in the business of betraying those who help us. The tension in the small cockpit was palpable. Shaw studied both sisters, trying to gauge their sincerity. Finally, he dropped his hand from his weapon. I was an art authentication specialist, he said. The admission, surprising even himself. For the Interstellar Museum Consortium, I could spot forgeries that fooled everyone else. A useful skill, until I started creating my own. The moss sculpture was my final commission before I was exposed. You fled, Tally observed. Shaw's laugh held no humor. With a price on my head and former clients who would rather see me dead than risk exposure themselves. He gestured around the ship. This is my life now. Small jobs, keeping my head down, staying one step ahead of bounty hunters. And yet you risked exposure to help us, Nara said softly. Shaw looked away, uncomfortable with her perception. It was a stupid impulse. Perhaps, she agreed. Or perhaps it was the first honest thing you've done in a long time. The three fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the steady hum of the ship's engines. I'm setting course for Vega Outpost, Shaw said finally. It's a neutral trading hub. We can refuel there, and you can decide where you want to go next. I have contacts who can help arrange transport. Neither sister argued, but Shaw noticed the quick glance they exchanged. A silent communication that spoke volumes. What? He asked. Nothing, Nara said smoothly. Vega Outpost sounds acceptable. Shaw wasn't convinced, but he didn't press the issue. Instead, he showed them how to access the ship's information system and food supplies, then returned to the cockpit to plot their course. The journey to Vega would take approximately 3 days at standard speed. 3 days in close quarters with 2 aliens who knew his biggest secret, Shaw wondered. Not for the first time, what he had gotten himself into. By the second day, an unexpected routine had developed aboard the Skylark. Shaw found himself increasingly impressed by the sisters' adaptability and knowledge. Tally had discovered and repaired 2 other minor issues with the ship's systems, while Nara had reorganized the chaotic storage lockers with ruthless efficiency. They shared meals together, the conversation gradually becoming less stilted. Shaw learned that the sisters had been in training for 15 years, having been selected from their community at a young age for their complementary aptitudes. Tally was identified for her technical abilities. Nara explained over a dinner of reconstituted protein and the last of the instant noodles. I showed promise in languages and cultural interpretation. They separated us at first, Tally added, her voice quieter than her sister's. Different training groups. But we refused to progress unless we were placed together, Nera continued. Eventually, they relented, as our combined skills made us valuable enough to accommodate this irregularity. Shaw observed the protective way Nera positioned herself. Always slightly in front of her sister. Always the first to speak. You've been looking out for each other a long time. Always, Nera said simply. That night, Shaw was awakened by muffled sounds coming from the sleeping area. He rose quietly from the cockpit chair, hand on his blaster, and moved toward the crew quarters. The noise resolved into soft sobbing. Tally's voice, speaking rapidly in the diary language, was punctuated by Nera's gentler tones. Shaw hesitated, then retreated to the cockpit. Whatever demons haunted their sleep were not his to intrude upon. In the morning, neither sister mentioned the nighttime disturbance, but Shaw noticed the shadows beneath Tally's eyes, the protective way Nera hovered closer to her than usual. We're about 16 hours from Vega, he announced over breakfast. Once we arrive, I'll need to handle the refueling and submit a sanitized flight plan. You should stay aboard until I've arranged safe transport for you. And where would we go? Nera asked, her tone deliberately light. The exchange would consider us damaged goods, and our home community surrendered their claim to us years ago. Shaw frowned. There must be somewhere you can go. Someplace safe. Perhaps, Nera conceded. But such places are rarely accessible to those without resources. I can provide some credits, Shaw offered. Enough to get you established somewhere. Tally looked up from her food. Why? The direct question caught Shaw off guard. Because it's the right thing to do, he said after a moment. The right thing, Tally repeated slowly, as if testing an unfamiliar concept. Not profitable. Not everything is about profit, Shaw replied, a bitter edge to his voice. Some things you do because otherwise. What's the point of any of it? The sisters exchanged another of their meaningful glances. We could stay, Tally said suddenly. Help with ship, earn passage. Shaw stared at her. Stay? On the Skylark? With me? Nera's expression was carefully controlled. It would be a practical arrangement. You have clearly been operating this vessel alone for some time, and as you've seen, Tally has valuable technical skills. I can assist with navigation, communication, and strategic planning. I'm a smuggler, Shaw reminded them. A thief with a price on his head. It's not exactly a safe career choice. Safer than being sold to the highest bidder at the next port, Nera countered. Shaw looked between them, seeing the determination beneath their controlled exteriors. They were afraid. Of course they were. But they were also making a calculated decision based on limited options. We'll discuss it after Vega, he said finally. Let's see what our options are before making any decisions. The sisters nodded in unison, but Shaw had the distinct impression they had already made up their minds. The proximity alarm shattered the pre-dawn quiet of the ship, jolting Shaw from his uneasy sleep. He lunged for the controls, cursing under his breath as the scanner revealed 3 ships approaching on an intercept course. Trouble? Nera appeared in the cockpit doorway, her expression alert despite the early hour. 3 vessels, unmarked, moving fast, Shaw confirmed, initiating evasive maneuvers. Wake Tally. We might need to make a quick jump. As Nera disappeared to rouse her sister, Shaw assessed their options. The approaching ships were small and agile, likely interceptors rather than official patrol vessels. Bounty hunters, then, or pirates. Neither possibility was good news. Tally slipped into the co-pilot seat moments later, her hands moving efficiently over the secondary controls. Engine output increased to 85%, she reported. Deflector shields activated. Good, Shaw nodded, impressed despite the circumstances. Can you route more power to the rear shields? If they're who I think they are, they'll try to disable our engines first. As Tally made the adjustments, A communication request flashed on the console. Shaw hesitated, then accepted it. A gruff voice filled the cockpit. "Vessel Skylark. This is Captain Vrex of the retrieval ship Bloodhound. Heave to and prepare to be boarded. We have no quarrel with you, only with the cargo you're carrying." Shaw muted the transmission. "They're after the moss sculpture," he told the sisters. "If I surrender it, they might let us go." "No," Nara said, her voice unexpectedly firm. "They're not after your sculpture, Shaw. They're after us." Shaw turned to her in surprise. "What? How do you know?" "Captain Vrex works exclusively for the Galactic Cultural Exchange," she explained rapidly. "He's their recovery specialist for high-value assets." "You're certain?" "Absolutely." Nara's expression was grim. "He's retrieved escaped trainees before." Shaw swore under his breath. "Then we definitely can't let them board." He unmuted the communication. "Captain Vrex, this is the Skylark. There must be a misunderstanding. We're carrying no valuable cargo, just standard supplies bound for Vega Outpost." "Don't insult my intelligence," Vrex growled. "We know exactly what you took from Zadric Station. The diary females are property of the exchange, and the penalty for their theft is severe. Surrender them now, and we might let you live." Shaw cut the transmission, a cold fury building in his chest. "Property," he spat. "I'm getting really tired of that word." The ship rocked as the first warning shot skimmed past their hull. "They're trying to herd us toward that asteroid field," Tally observed, pointing to the navigation display. "Cut off escape vectors." "They know what they're doing," Shaw agreed, his mind racing. "But so do we. Tally, can you access the emergency protocols for the propulsion system?" She nodded, fingers flying over the controls. "What are you planning?" Nara asked, bracing herself against the doorframe as another near miss jolted the ship. "Something stupid," Shaw admitted. "We're going to vent a controlled plasma burst from the rear thrusters. Make it look like they've damaged our engines. When they move in closer to dock, we'll hit them with everything we've got and make a run for it." "That's exceptionally risky," Nara noted, though Shaw detected a hint of admiration in her voice. "Welcome to life with a smuggler," he replied, offering a grim smile. "Tally, are those protocols ready?" "Yes," she confirmed, "but timing must be precise." "Get ready," Shaw instructed, his hands steady on the controls despite the danger. "When I give the signal, initiate the vent." The pursuing ships had formed a triangular pattern behind them, closing the distance methodically. Shaw waited until the lead vessel, presumably Vrex's Bloodhound, had moved slightly ahead of the others. "Now!" he shouted. Tally activated the protocol. The Skylark shuddered as superheated plasma vented from the rear thrusters in a spectacular display. To any observer, it would appear that their propulsion system had suffered a catastrophic failure. The effect was immediate. The three pursuing ships slowed their approach, and Vrex's voice came through the communication system again, smug with triumph. "Wise decision. Skylark, power down your remaining systems and prepare for boarding." Shaw's fingers hovered over the weapons control. "Ready?" he asked the sisters. Nara had moved to the tactical station, her expression resolute. "Ready." "On my mark," Shaw said, watching as the Bloodhound moved into optimal position. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Skylark came to life with sudden ferocity. The weapon system, normally concealed within the ship's hull, deployed and fired in one fluid motion, striking the Bloodhound's forward sensors. Simultaneously, Shaw threw the engines into maximum thrust, using the confusion to break away from the ambush. The other two ships reacted quickly, but their formation had been disrupted by the Skylark's apparent surrender. One vessel managed to land a glancing blow on their port side, sending warning lights flashing across the control panel. "Damage report," Shaw called, navigating through a series of evasive maneuvers. "Hull breach in Cargo Section 3, Tally reported. "Automated seals engaged. Power fluctuations in the port engine array. Can we make a jump to light speed? Tally's hands moved over the diagnostics panel. Yes, but not sustained. Recommend short jump followed by immediate drop to real space. That'll work, Shaw nodded. Calculating jump coordinates now. As the navigation computer processed the calculations, the ship rocked with another hit. Shields down to 30%, Nera reported from the tactical station. They're targeting our navigation array. Almost there, Shaw muttered, watching the computer's progress. Just a few more seconds. The console chimed as the coordinates locked in. Shaw didn't hesitate, engaging the lightspeed drive immediately. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines as the Skylark leapt forward, leaving their pursuers temporarily behind. Jump successful, Tally confirmed. Engine stress within acceptable parameters. Dropping to real space in 3, 2, 1. Shaw activated the sequence, and the Skylark shuddered as it returned to normal space. Where are we? Nera checked the navigation system. Sector 87 Delta. Uninhabited region. No known patrol routes. Approximately 12 hours from Vega at standard speed. Shaw exhaled slowly, allowing himself to feel the relief of their narrow escape. We should be safe for now, but we need to make repairs before attempting any significant travel. The automated systems have sealed the hull breach, Tally reported, but the engine array requires manual intervention. I'll suit up and take a look, Shaw began, only to be interrupted by Nera's sharp intake of breath. Shaw, you're injured. He followed her gaze to his left side, where a dark stain was spreading across his shirt. In the chaos of their escape, he hadn't noticed the pain, but now it hit him in a sudden wave. A piece of shrapnel must have caught him during one of the impacts. It's nothing, he insisted, though the room had begun to spin slightly. Just a scratch? You require medical attention, Nera stated firmly, moving to his side. Tally, the medical kit? Tally was already retrieving it from its storage compartment. Between them, the sisters helped Shaw to the small medical bay adjacent to the crew quarters. The wound, when exposed, was deeper than he had thought. A jagged gash along his ribs that bled freely. The autodoc can handle this, Shaw said, gesturing to the automated medical unit built into the wall. Just help me in. It's malfunctioning, Tally observed, examining the unit's diagnostic panel. Safety protocols offline. Of course it is, Shaw muttered, the pain making him irritable. Perfect timing. I can treat this, Nera said, her voice calm and confident as she opened the medical kit. We received extensive first aid training. Hold still. Despite the pain, Shaw found himself impressed by the efficient way the sisters worked together. Tally prepared the instruments while Nera cleaned the wound with practiced movements. Her touch was gentle but firm, her concentration absolute. You'll need stitches, she informed him. The regenerative gel alone won't be sufficient for a wound this deep. Shaw grimaced. Wonderful. I can administer a local anesthetic, she offered, holding up a hypospray. Save it, he replied. We might need it more later. Just do what you have to do. Nera nodded, respect flickering in her dark eyes. As she prepared the suture kit, Shaw found himself studying her face, the graceful sweep of her white markings, the subtle shifts in her expression that belied her outward composure. Why are you helping me? He asked suddenly. You could have taken the ship when I was injured, made a run for it. Nera's hands paused momentarily before resuming their work. Is that what you would have done? Once upon a time, maybe, Shaw admitted. Before you traded a valuable drink for two strangers, she suggested, beginning the first careful stitch. Shaw winced at the sharp pain. That was just impulse. Perhaps, Nera agreed, her focus on her task. Or perhaps it was who you truly are, beneath the thief's mask you wear. Shaw fell silent, unsure how to respond to her insight. Tally worked quietly beside her sister, handing instruments as needed without being asked. Their coordination spoke of years of practice, of a bond that transcended mere biology. There, Nera said finally, applying a protective layer of regenerative gel over the now closed wound. It will be uncomfortable for several days, but if you avoid strenuous activity, it should heal cleanly. Thank you, Shah said, the words feeling inadequate. Both of you. Tally nodded solemnly. We protect our own. The phrase hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that none of them seemed ready to explore. You should rest, Nera advised, helping him to his feet. We can handle the ship for now. Shah wanted to protest, to insist that he needed to check the engines and plan their next move. But exhaustion and blood loss were taking their toll. He allowed them to guide him to one of the sleeping pods, where he fell into a restless slumber. His dreams filled with pursuing ships and dark eyes, marked with graceful white patterns. He woke hours later to the smell of cooking, a rarity aboard the Skylark, where meals typically came from packets or the protein synthesizer. Following the scent, he found Tally in the galley, carefully stirring something in a small pot. What is that? He asked, his voice rough from sleep. She turned, studying him with those penetrating eyes. Healing broth. Found spices in storage locker. Shah eased himself onto a stool, mindful of his injured side. I didn't even know I had spices. Hidden behind emergency oxygen supplies, Tally explained. Very old, still good. Where's Nera? Engine repair, Tally replied, returning her attention to the pot. She has smaller hands, can reach damaged connections. Shah frowned. She shouldn't be doing that. I should. She is capable, Tally interrupted, a rare assertiveness in her voice. Let her help. Something in her tone made Shah relent. He watched as she poured the broth into a battered metal cup and placed it before him. Drink, she instructed. Promotes healing, reduces infection risk. The broth was surprisingly good, rich and aromatic, with a warming effect that seemed to spread from his core outward. Shah hadn't realized how hungry he was until the first sip awakened his appetite. This is excellent, he admitted between careful sips. Where did you learn to make it? Cultural training, Tally explained, cleaning the small pot with methodical precision. Food preparation, important diplomatic skill, shows respect for host traditions. Shah considered her words. The exchange taught you to cook as a hospitality skill? For diplomatic functions. Tally nodded. Among other things. What other things? He asked, though he wasn't certain he wanted to know the answer. She met his gaze steadily. Whatever would please our assigned hosts. The implication hung heavy in the air. Shah set down his cup. Appetite suddenly diminished. That's not diplomacy, he said quietly. That's servitude. Exploitation. It is what we were trained for, Tally replied, her tone matter-of-fact. Nera, more than me. She was more suitable. Shah felt sick. The Galactic Cultural Exchange had presented itself as a prestigious institution, fostering understanding between species. The reality, it seemed, was far darker. And now, he asked, what do you want now, Tally? Not what you were trained for, but what you want. The question seemed to confuse her. She tilted her head, considering it with genuine puzzlement. Want? Yes, want, desire, hope for. Tally was silent for a long moment. To stay with Nera, she said finally. To not be separated. To be useful without being used. Her simple answer struck Shah with unexpected force. Before he could respond, Nera appeared in the doorway, her clothes smudged with engine grease. The port engine array is repaired, she announced. We should have full power restored within the hour. Shah turned to her, seeing her now with new understanding. Thank you. She inclined her head slightly. It is a temporary fix. We'll need proper parts eventually. We'll get them, Shah assured her. There's a trading post in the Corvus system where I have contacts. We can avoid Vega entirely. We, Nera repeated, a question in her eyes. Shaw looked between the sisters. If you still want to stay, both of you. As crew, Nara asked carefully. As partners, Shaw corrected. Equal shares in whatever we earn. Equal say in where we go. The sisters exchanged one of their meaningful glances, a silent communication that excluded him. Finally, Nara nodded. We accept your offer, Shaw. But you should know, Captain Vrex will not give up easily. The exchange invests considerable resources in its assets. Let them come, Shaw replied, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. We'll be ready. For the first time since he had met them. Tally smiled, a small, cautious expression that transformed her solemn features. Nara's own smile followed, more reserved, but no less genuine. In that moment, something shifted aboard the Skylark. They were no longer rescuer and rescued, no longer temporary allies. They had become something else entirely, something none of them had expected, but all of them, perhaps, had needed. The journey to the Corvus system passed without incident. Shaw's wound healed well under Nara's careful attention, and Tally's improvements to the ship's systems gave the Skylark greater speed and efficiency than it had known in years. They established a comfortable routine, sharing meals and stories, gradually revealing more of themselves to one another. Shaw spoke of his earlier life as an art authenticator, of his gradual descent into forgery and theft. The sisters shared more details of their years in the exchange program, the rigorous training, the constant evaluation, the subtle threats that kept them compliant. We were told we were fortunate, Nara explained one evening as they sat in the common area, drinking the herbal tea Tally had concocted from their limited supplies. That our selection brought honor to our community. Did you ever go home, visit your family? Shaw asked. Tally shook her head. Not permitted. Complete separation required for proper conditioning. They called it cultural immersion, Nara added, a rare bitterness in her voice. In reality, it was about erasing our previous identities, making us suitable vessels for whatever role we were assigned. Shaw felt the familiar anger rising. And no one questioned this system? Some did, Nara admitted. There were advocates who called for reform, who exposed abuses within the program. But the exchange is powerful, with connections throughout the Galactic Council. Investigations were opened and closed without result. And meanwhile, they continued training young Diary for diplomatic service, Shaw said, unable to keep the disgust from his voice. Not just Diary, Tally corrected. Many species. Those with desirable traits or abilities. The implications of this statement hung in the air between them. Shaw had always operated on the fringes of galactic society, moving illegal goods and avoiding official attention. He had known, in an abstract way, that corruption existed at the highest levels. But this was different. Systematic exploitation masked as cultural exchange, hidden in plain sight. We'll need to be careful in Corvus, he said finally, redirecting the conversation to more immediate concerns. The exchange might have agents there. We should alter our appearance, Nara suggested. Tally and I can adjust our markings to appear as a different Diary subspecies. And perhaps you should consider a disguise as well. Shaw touched his beard thoughtfully. I've been meaning to shave this off anyway. The Corvus trading post orbited a gas giant, its ramshackle structures built into and around a collection of ancient mining platforms. Unlike Zadric Station, with its rigid security protocols and official presence, Corvus operated on an honor system of sorts, merchants and smugglers respecting each other's territory and resolving disputes privately, without involving external authorities. Shaw docked the Skylark at an inconspicuous berth on the station's lower level, where questions were few and bribes were reasonable. As planned, all three had altered their appearances. Shaw had shaved his beard and dyed his hair a nondescript brown, while the sisters had applied a specialized pigment to their skin markings, changing the distinctive white patterns to a mottled gray that identified them as members of a less prestigious diary clan. "Remember, we're here for engine parts and supplies," Shaw reminded them as they prepared to disembark. "No unnecessary risks. If anyone shows too much interest in us, we leave immediately." "Understood," Nara confirmed, adjusting the rough trader's jacket she had adopted as part of her disguise. Beside her, Tally nodded, her eyes already scanning the docking area through the viewport. The station's corridors were crowded with a diverse mix of species, legitimate traders alongside smugglers and mercenaries, all conducting their business with minimal interference. Shaw led them confidently through the maze of passages, occasionally exchanging nods with familiar faces who, thankfully, did not look too closely at his altered appearance. At the parts market on level 3, Shaw haggled with a Viridian merchant over the engine components they needed. Nara stood beside him, occasionally offering technical observations that impressed both Shaw and the merchant. Tally had wandered a short distance away, examining a display of rare tools with evident fascination. The transaction was nearly complete when Shaw noticed a pair of security officers moving through the crowd. Their uniforms were unmarked, but their bearing and the way other merchants subtly cleared a path for them marked them as authorities of some kind. More concerning was the handheld scanner one of them carried, a model Shaw recognized as being capable of biometric identification. "We need to go," he murmured to Nara, completing the purchase with a quick transfer of credits. "Now." She followed his gaze and nodded imperceptibly. "I'll get Tally." As Nara moved to retrieve her sister, Shaw gathered the purchased parts, deliberately keeping his face turned away from the approaching officers. They were still several stalls away, but moving methodically in their direction. Nara returned with Tally, and the three of them began making their way toward the exit, maintaining a casual pace that wouldn't attract attention. They had almost reached the corridor when Shaw heard a shout behind them. "Hold! Security check!" Shaw didn't look back. "Walk faster," he instructed quietly. "But don't run." They increased their pace, turning into a side passage that Shaw knew led to a maintenance lift. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. "Identification scan for all persons in this sector," the officer called. "Routine security protocol." "This way." Shaw guided them around another corner, toward a service corridor used by the station's maintenance staff. The door required an access code, but Shaw had done business in Corvus long enough to have acquired certain useful information. He punched in a sequence, and the door slid open with a reluctant hiss. They slipped through, Shaw sealing the door behind them. The narrow corridor beyond was dimly lit and smelled of lubricant and recycled air. "That will only delay them briefly," he warned. "We need to get back to the Skylark." "There's another route," Tally said unexpectedly. "Through the environmental control section. Saw it on station schematic." Shaw raised an eyebrow. "When did you study the station schematic?" "While you were sleeping," she replied matter-of-factly. "Always study escape routes." Shaw exchanged a glance with Nara, who shrugged slightly, a hint of pride in her expression. "Lead the way," he told Tally. She navigated the maintenance corridors with surprising confidence, leading them through a labyrinth of service tunnels and access shafts. They encountered a few station workers, but in their nondescript clothing, they passed as maintenance crew, receiving nothing more than cursory nods. After what seemed like an eternity of crawling through dusty conduits and squeezing past humming machinery, they emerged on the lower docking level, not far from where the Skylark was berthed. "Impressive," Shaw acknowledged as they approached their ship. "How did you memorize such a complex route?" "Diary spatial memory," Tally explained. "Evolutionary adaptation from cave-dwelling ancestors." Shaw shook his head in admiration. "Remind me to let you plan all our escape routes from now on." As they reached the Skylark's airlock, Shaw's relief was short-lived. A figure detached itself from the shadows near their ship, a tall, muscular human with a cybernetic eye implant that glowed faintly in the dim light. "Shaw," the man greeted him, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Or whatever you're calling yourself these days. You've been busy." Shaw positioned himself subtly in front of the sisters. "Garrett, it's been a while." "Not long enough," Garrett replied, his cybernetic eye scanning them with methodical precision. "Word is there's a nice bounty on your head, and an even nicer one for your blue friends there." "You've never been one to chase bounties," Shaw observed, carefully gauging the distance to the airlock controls. "Too much competition in that field." Garrett's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Times change. The exchange pays well for the return of its property." "We are not property," Nara stated, stepping forward to stand beside Shaw. "And we will not return." Garrett's gaze shifted to her, his expression unimpressed. "Spirited. I can see why they valued you." His hand moved to the weapon at his hip. "Nothing personal, but business is business." Shaw tensed, preparing to lunge for the man's weapon. But before either of them could move, Tally spoke. "Environmental alert in docking section 5, she announced, her voice oddly flat. "Oxygen levels dropping. Emergency protocols initiated." As if on cue, warning lights began to flash throughout the docking area, and a computerized voice echoed through the corridor. "Warning. Environmental hazard detected in Section 5. All personnel evacuate immediately. Sealing affected areas in 60 seconds. Garrett hesitated, his cybernetic eye flickering as he accessed the station's information network. "There's no alert in the system." That moment of confusion was all Shaw needed. He lunged forward, driving his shoulder into Garrett's midsection. The bounty hunter staggered back, off balance but recovering quickly. His hand closed around his weapon. But Nara was there, delivering a precise strike to his wrist that sent the blaster clattering to the floor. Garrett snarled, reaching for a secondary weapon. But Tally had circled behind him, with surprising strength. She swept his legs from under him, sending him crashing to the deck. "The airlock!" Shaw shouted, scrambling for the controls. The door slid open, and Nara darted inside, Tally right behind her. Garrett was already regaining his feet, his expression murderous. Shaw dove through the airlock just as the bounty hunter lunged for him. The door sealed shut with a pneumatic hiss, Garrett's fist pounding on the outer hull. "Get us out of here," Shaw called, rushing to the cockpit. Nara was already there, initiating the launch sequence with practiced efficiency. "Docking clamps released," she reported, as Shaw took the pilot's seat. "Ready for departure." "What about the environmental alert?" Shaw asked, guiding the ship away from the station. Tally appeared in the cockpit doorway, a small device in her hand. "False alarm," she explained, holding up what Shaw now recognized as a station security transmitter, one she must have acquired during their journey through the maintenance corridors. Shaw stared at her for a moment, then let out a surprised laugh. "Remind me never to underestimate you." Tally's expression remained serious. "Garrett will report us." "Undoubtedly," Shaw agreed, his amusement fading. "And he won't be the only one looking for us now." Nara studied the scanner readouts. "No pursuit yet, but we should expect it soon." Shaw nodded grimly. "We need to disappear for a while. Somewhere unexpected." They left the Corvus system behind, taking a circuitous route through less traveled sectors. Shaw had spent years cultivating knowledge of hidden paths and uncharted regions, places where a small ship could vanish from the surveillance networks that blanketed the more populated areas of the galaxy. 3 days later, they entered a remote star system on the edge of the outer territories. The primary star was a red dwarf, its dim light barely reaching the handful of small planets that orbited it. Shaw guided the Skylark toward the second moon of the outermost planet, a barren-looking sphere of rock and ice that showed no signs of habitation. "Are you certain about this?" Nara asked, studying the desolate landscape through the viewport. "There appears to be nothing here." "That's the point," Shaw replied, bringing the ship down toward a flat plain near the equator. No one comes here. No resources worth mining. No strategic value. Not even enough atmosphere for most species to breathe without assistance. Then why are we here? Tally asked, her practical nature asserting itself. Shaw's smile held a hint of mystery. You'll see. The Skylark landed with a gentle bump on the rocky surface. Shaw engaged the external atmospheric analyzers, confirming what he already knew. The moon's thin atmosphere was primarily nitrogen and carbon dioxide, with trace amounts of oxygen insufficient for human respiration. We'll need environment suits to go outside, he informed the sisters as he checked the ship's supply locker. I have 3, though they're all human-sized. Might be a bit large on you. Nera examined the suits with a critical eye. We can adjust them. Diary require less oxygen than humans, so the air supply will last longer for us. Once suited up, they exited the ship through the cargo airlock. The gravity was lighter than Earth standard, giving their movements a slightly buoyant quality. Shaw led them across the rocky plain toward a formation of jagged cliffs that rose in the distance. Watch your step, he cautioned as they navigated the uneven terrain. The surface can be treacherous. As they approached the cliff face, what had appeared from a distance to be natural formations revealed themselves as ancient, weathered structures, the remnants of what might once have been a small settlement, carved directly into the rock. What is this place? Nera asked, her voice filled with wonder as they entered a vast chamber hollowed from the cliff. No one knows for certain, Shaw replied, activating the suit's external lights to illuminate the space. I found it years ago, when I was running from people who wanted me dead. The civilization that built it is long gone, predates even the oldest records in the galactic archives. The chamber's walls were covered in intricate patterns, not quite writing, but too deliberate to be random. The floor was smooth, as if worn by countless footsteps over millennia. It's beautiful, Tally observed, running a gloved hand over one of the patterns. Functional too. These channels, they directed airflow, created natural ventilation. Shaw nodded, impressed by her insight. There are several chambers like this one, all connected. Some still have functional systems, water collection, thermal regulation. I've used it as a safe house before. No one else knows it exists, as far as I can tell. How long do you intend for us to stay here? Nera asked, her practical nature reasserting itself. A few weeks, maybe a month, Shaw replied. Long enough for the immediate hunt to die down. We have supplies, and with the parts we bought on Corvus, we can complete the repairs to the Skylark. When we leave, we'll be in better shape than we've ever been. The sisters exchanged one of their communicative glances. And then, Nera pressed, where do we go from here, Shaw? It was a question that went beyond their immediate plans, and Shaw knew it. He gazed around the ancient chamber, considering his response. I've been thinking about that, he said finally. About what comes next for us. I've spent years running, taking whatever jobs came my way, never staying in one place long enough to build anything lasting. He turned to face them directly. But maybe it's time for something different. Different how? Tally asked. The Exchange isn't the only organization that deals in cultural artifacts, Shaw explained, warming to his idea. There are legitimate museums, private collectors who don't ask too many questions about provenance. With my knowledge of art and antiquities, and your skills, we could specialize in locating and retrieving lost or stolen cultural treasures. You mean become recovery specialists? Nera clarified. Using our knowledge of the Exchange to undermine their operations? Exactly, Shaw nodded. We'd be selective about our clients, work on our own terms. It wouldn't be entirely legal, but it would be right and profitable. The sisters considered this proposition, communicating silently in their subtle way. It would be dangerous, Nera observed. The exchange has extensive resources. More dangerous than what we're doing now, Shaw countered. At least we'd be choosing our risks, making a difference. I like it, Tally stated simply, surprising both Shaw and Nera with her directness. Purpose, justice. Nera studied her sister for a moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. But first, we must ensure our own security. No more improvisation. We plan everything carefully. Shaw felt an unexpected surge of relief at their acceptance. Agreed. We start by making this place properly habitable. The Skylark can land inside that larger chamber we passed. It'll be completely hidden from orbital scans. Over the next days, they established their temporary base in the ancient structures. Shaw marveled at how quickly the sisters adapted to their new environment, applying their diverse training to practical problems. Tally's technical knowledge proved invaluable as they rigged power systems and modified the alien water collection apparatus to provide a steady supply of clean water. Nera, meanwhile, revealed unexpected talents in organization and strategy. She created detailed inventory systems for their supplies and began mapping the entire complex of chambers and tunnels, identifying defensive positions and potential escape routes. Working together on these immediate tasks, Shaw found himself appreciating their complementary abilities in new ways. Tally's focused intensity balanced Nera's broader vision. Shaw's experience bridged gaps in their knowledge of the wider galaxy. They were becoming, he realized, an effective team. In the evenings, they gathered in the central chamber, where they had established their living area. Tally had discovered that certain mineral deposits in the walls gave off a soft, phosphorescent glow when exposed to the right frequency of light, providing gentle illumination without depleting their power supplies. During these quiet hours, they shared more of themselves. The sisters spoke of their childhood on the diary homeworld, memories that had been suppressed during their training but were now resurfacing. Shaw, in turn, told them of his early passion for art, of the mentor who had recognized his talent for spotting forgeries, and of his gradual corruption as he realized how much more profitable it was to create fakes than to authenticate originals. I justified it to myself, he admitted one evening, staring into the small heating unit that served as their campfire. Told myself I was only fooling wealthy collectors who would never miss the credits. But the truth is, I enjoyed the deception, the thrill of creating something so perfect it fooled even the experts. The desire to excel is not inherently corrupt, Nera observed. It was the application that led you astray. Shaw glanced at her, struck by the absence of judgment in her voice. Perhaps, but intentions only count for so much. They count for everything, Tally interjected with unusual vehemence. Purpose shapes action. Shaw pondered her words, recognizing the wisdom in them. Is that why you're both here? Because your purpose has changed? Yes, Nera confirmed. The exchange trained us to serve without question. You showed us there was another choice. When you offered that drink, Tally added, you saw us as people, not assets. The simple truth of her statement moved Shaw deeply. He had acted on impulse that day in the lucky drop, never imagining how that single decision would alter the course of 3 lives. Well, he said, trying to lighten the suddenly emotional atmosphere. It was very expensive liquor. Nera's smile was knowing. Indeed, though I suspect it has proven worth the cost. As the days passed, their temporary shelter began to feel increasingly like a home. They established routines, divided responsibilities, and gradually transformed the ancient alien structure into a space that accommodated their needs. Shaw found himself looking forward to their evening gatherings, to the easy companionship that had developed between them. On the 15th day, as Shaw was completing repairs to the Skylark's navigation system, he heard Tally calling from one of the outer chambers. There was an urgency in her voice that immediately put him on alert. He found both sisters in a small room they had been excavating, where the ancient patterns on the walls were particularly intricate. What is it? He asked, noting their excited expressions. Look. Tally pointed to a section of wall they had uncovered. Unlike the abstract patterns that decorated most of the complex, this panel contained what was unmistakably a map, a three-dimensional representation of a star system, with one planet prominently marked. It's navigational, Nera explained. We believe it shows the location of another settlement, perhaps even the homeworld of whoever built this place. Shaw studied the map with growing interest. Can you interpret the coordinates? With some work, yes. Nera nodded. The astronomical references are archaic, but the principles are universal. We've already identified several recognizable star patterns. This could be valuable, Shaw mused. An undiscovered civilization, predating known records. Museums would pay handsomely for this information. Or we could explore it ourselves, Tally suggested. First discovery rights. The proposal was tempting. Shaw had spent his career appropriating others' cultural treasures. The thought of discovering something genuinely new, of being the first to document an ancient civilization, held undeniable appeal. It would be a fitting first mission for our new enterprise, Nera observed, correctly reading his interest. A legitimate discovery, rather than a theft or recovery. Shaw nodded slowly, already considering the practical aspects. We'd need to complete the Skylark's repairs first. Make sure we're properly equipped for exploration. His planning was interrupted by a sudden, piercing alarm from the proximity sensors they had placed around the perimeter of their hideout. Shaw's hand went automatically to the weapon at his hip. Something's triggered the outer sensors, he said tersely. Could be just local wildlife, but we should check. They moved quickly to the monitoring station they had established near the entrance to the complex. The sensor readouts showed multiple contacts approaching from the direction of the plane where they had initially landed. Those aren't animals, Nera stated, examining the regular pattern of movement. Those are people, at least 6 of them, moving in formation. Shaw's mind raced. No one knew about this place. He had never shared its location, not even with his most trusted contacts. How had they been found? The Skylark, he realized suddenly. They must have placed a tracker on it at Corvus. Garrett, Tally agreed grimly. During confrontation. We need to move, Shaw decided. The ship is ready enough. We can finish repairs elsewhere. They gathered only the most essential supplies, abandoning equipment that could be replaced. As they prepared to make their way to the concealed chamber where the Skylark was docked, Nera paused to download the star map data they had discovered. We're not leaving this behind, she said firmly. It's too important. Shaw didn't argue. They moved silently through the complex, using passages they had mapped during their stay. Through a narrow observation slit in the outer wall, Shaw caught a glimpse of their pursuers, humanoid figures in environmental suits, heavily armed, approaching with professional caution. Exchange recovery team, Nera whispered beside him. Elite unit. I recognize their formation. Shaw nodded grimly. This wasn't a random bounty hunter or opportunistic tracker. This was a dedicated team, sent specifically to retrieve the sisters and eliminate anyone who stood in their way. They reached the chamber where the Skylark was docked without incident. But as they approached the ship, Shaw's instincts screamed a warning. He raised a hand, signaling the sisters to stop. Something's wrong, he murmured. It's too easy. Tally tilted her head, listening intently. Engine signature, she said after a moment. Not ours. Outside. Shaw cursed under his breath. They have a ship waiting. Probably more agents positioned to cut off our escape. He surveyed the chamber, considering their options. We need a diversion. The thermal regulators in the eastern section, Nera suggested. If we overload them, the resulting steam release would trigger their sensors, Shaw nodded. Good thinking. I'll do it, Tally volunteered. No exact sequence. Can rejoin you at ship. Shaw hesitated. It's too dangerous to split up. More dangerous to stay together, Tally countered pragmatically. Need diversion to succeed. Before Shaw could argue further, Nera placed a hand on his arm. She's right, Shaw, and she knows these systems better than either of us. The logic was sound, but Shaw felt a deep reluctance to separate. In the short time they had been together, he had grown fiercely protective of both sisters. The thought of Tally facing danger alone troubled him deeply. 2 minutes, he conceded finally. Create the diversion, then come straight to the ship. We'll be ready for immediate departure. Tally nodded solemnly, then surprised him by clasping his hand briefly, a gesture of reassurance that spoke volumes from the usually reserved diary. Without another word, she slipped away into the darkness of the tunnel. Shaw and Nera continued to the Skylark, moving with heightened caution. They reached the ship without encountering any opposition, which only intensified Shaw's unease. The loading ramp lowered at his command, and they entered quickly. Shaw, immediately moving to the cockpit to prepare for launch. Run a full system scan, he instructed Nera as she took the co-pilot seat. Look for anything unusual: trackers, sabotage devices, surveillance equipment. As Nera worked, Shaw monitored the external sensors, watching for any sign of their pursuers. The minutes stretched painfully as they waited for Tally's diversion. Scan complete, Nera reported. No foreign devices detected on board. However, there's an unusual energy signature near the outer airlock, possibly a detection device placed to alert them when we board. Meaning they know we're here, Shaw concluded grimly. Where's that diversion? As if in response to his question, a distant rumble shook the chamber, followed by warning alerts on the environmental monitors. Tally had succeeded. The thermal regulators were overloading, creating a massive steam release that would draw attention and confuse sensors. Start the engines, Shaw ordered, his eyes fixed on the tunnel entrance where Tally should appear. But be ready to wait. Nera activated the startup sequence, the Skylark humming to life around them. Shaw continued his vigilant watch, every sense alert for danger. The seconds ticked by with excruciating slowness. 1 minute, 90 seconds. No sign of Tally. Something's wrong, Shaw muttered, rising from his seat. She should be here by now. Shaw. Nera's voice was tight with concern. Movement at the eastern tunnel. Multiple figures. The scanner confirmed her observation. 4 environmental suits emerging from the steam-filled passage. And in their midst, a smaller figure being half dragged, half carried. Tally. Shaw's hand moved to his weapon. They've got her. Nera was already on her feet. We need to help her. We will, Shaw assured her, mind racing through scenarios. But we need to be smart about this. They'll be expecting a rescue attempt. He studied the scanner readouts, noting the positions of the exchange agents. They had stopped in the center of the chamber, clearly visible from the Skylark's viewport. One agent stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a familiar face. Captain Vrex, the recovery specialist who had pursued them after Zadrix. Shaw! Vrex called, his voice carrying across the chamber. I know you can hear me. Come out and talk. No tricks. Or the little blue one gets a quick decompression experience. To emphasize his point, he gestured to one of his team, who began to loosen the seals on Tally's environmental suit. Even from a distance, Shaw could see her struggling against her captors, her movements hampered by restraints. He's bluffing, Shaw muttered. He wants both of them alive. We cannot take that risk, Nera replied, her voice tight with fear for her sister. Vrex has a reputation for ruthlessness. If he cannot have both of us, he will settle for one, and make an example of those who interfere. Shaw knew she was right. The exchange valued the sisters, but they would sacrifice one to secure the other if necessary, especially if it served as a warning to others who might consider defying them. I have an idea, he said slowly. But it's dangerous, and you'll need to trust me completely. Nera met his gaze steadily. I trust you, Shaw. Tell me what to do. Shaw quickly outlined his plan. It was risky, with too many variables beyond their control, but it was the best option they had. Nera listened intently, her expression resolute. "It could work," she agreed when he had finished. "But the timing must be perfect." "It will be," Shaw assured her, hoping his confidence was justified. "Take position in the cargo bay and be ready. I'll handle Vrex." As Nera moved to prepare, Shaw took a deep breath, steadying himself for what was to come. Then, he lowered the Skylark's ramp and stepped out into the chamber, hands raised in apparent surrender. "Vrex," he called, walking slowly toward the exchange team. "Let's talk." The captain's expression was coldly triumphant. "There's nothing to discuss, Shaw. You have something that belongs to the exchange. Two somethings, in fact." "They don't belong to anyone," Shaw replied, continuing his measured approach. "They're people, not property." Vrex laughed, the sound echoing harshly in the cavernous space. "Spare me the moral outrage. You're a thief, not a crusader. What did you hope to gain? A ransom? Or were you planning to sell them to a private collector?" Shaw was close enough now to see Tally clearly. Her eyes met his, showing not fear, but a fierce, calculating intelligence. She understood that he had a plan. "Neither," Shaw answered Vrex. "I was helping them because it was the right thing to do." "How noble," Vrex sneered. "And where is the other one, the taller diary?" Shaw shrugged. "Gone. I sent her ahead with an escape pod while we prepared the ship. She's probably halfway to the next system by now." Fury flashed across Vrex's face. "You're lying. Our scans detected 3 life signs aboard your vessel when we arrived." "Check again," Shaw suggested. "You'll find only me and the ship's systems." Vrex gestured sharply to one of his team, who consulted a handheld scanner. The agent's confusion was evident even through his environmental suit as he reported. "He's right, sir. Only 1 life sign on the ship now." Vrex's expression darkened. "Search the complex! Find the other one!" 2 of his agents hurried to obey, disappearing back into the tunnels. Shaw took advantage of the momentary distraction to move closer. "Let Tally go. Vrex, your quarrel is with me." "My quarrel is with anyone who interferes with exchange business," Vrex snapped. "And you've cost us valuable time and resources." He drew his weapon, aiming it at Shaw's chest. "Perhaps I should simply eliminate the problem entirely." Shaw tensed, ready to act. "You could do that," he acknowledged. "But then you'd never find the other diary. And you'd have to explain to your superiors how you managed to lose half of your assigned recovery target." Uncertainty flickered across Vrex's face, exactly as Shaw had hoped. The captain was weighing his options, calculating the consequences of failure. In that moment of hesitation, Shaw made his move. He lunged forward, not toward Vrex but toward the agent holding Tally. The sudden movement caught them off guard, allowing Shaw to slam into the agent with enough force to break his grip on Tally. "Run!" Shaw shouted, spinning to face Vrex, who was already raising his weapon. The shot came not from Vrex but from somewhere behind Shaw. A blinding flash of energy struck the captain squarely in the chest, sending him staggering backward. His return fire went wide, missing Shaw by inches. Nera stood at the base of the Skylark's ramp, a high-powered energy rifle braced against her shoulder. Her aim was precise, as she fired again, forcing the remaining agent to dive for cover. Shaw grabbed Tally's arm, pulling her toward the ship. "Move!" They ran, Nera providing covering fire as they sprinted across the chamber. Vrex had recovered enough to shout orders to his team, and the sound of returning fire filled the air around them. They were halfway to the Skylark when Shaw felt the impact, a searing pain that tore through his side. He stumbled, nearly falling, but Tally's surprising strength kept him upright. "Keep going," he gasped, pushing through the pain. Nera had seen him hit. She advanced, firing with controlled precision to force Vrex and his remaining agent to take cover behind a rock formation. Her expression was calm, but her eyes blazed with a protective fury Shaw had never seen before. They reached the ship's ramp, Tally supporting Shaw's increasingly unsteady steps. As soon as they were inside, Nara backed up the ramp, still firing to discourage pursuit. "Close it!" she commanded, slapping the control panel. The ramp began to rise, sealing them inside the Skylark. "Get to the cockpit," Shaw instructed through gritted teeth, the pain in his side intensifying with each heartbeat. "We need to launch before they can regroup." Tally helped him to the pilot's seat, while Nara took the co-pilot position, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced efficiency. "Engine sequence initiated," she reported. "Thrusters at full capacity." Shaw fought through the haze of pain to focus on the launch procedure. The Skylark shuddered as its engines powered up, the vibration sending fresh waves of agony through his wounded side. "They're attempting to block the exit," Nara warned, indicating the scanner. The remaining exchange agents had positioned themselves at the chamber's opening, weapons ready. "Let them try," Shaw muttered, engaging the ship's forward thrusters. The Skylark surged toward the narrow exit, its shields deflecting the barrage of energy bolts from the agents' weapons. They scattered as the ship bore down on them, unwilling to be crushed in their attempt to prevent escape. The Skylark burst from the ancient structure into the open air of the barren moon. Shaw immediately initiated the ascent sequence, pushing the engines to their limits as they climbed toward space. "Detection of pursuit craft," Tally reported from the scanner station where she had positioned herself. "Exchange vessel powering up on the surface." "They won't catch us," Shaw assured her, though the effort of remaining conscious was becoming increasingly difficult. "The Skylark is faster than anything they've got." As they broke atmosphere, Shaw programmed a series of rapid jumps, a technique he had perfected over years of evasion. Instead of setting a single course, the ship would make multiple short hyperspace jumps in seemingly random directions, making pursuit nearly impossible. With the final commands entered, Shaw initiated the first jump. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines as the Skylark leapt into hyperspace. "That should lose them," he managed to say before the edges of his vision began to darken. "Just need to—" He didn't finish the sentence. The last thing he heard was Nara calling his name, her voice seeming to come from very far away. Shaw drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of snippets of reality, Tally, and Nara's voices. The sensation of being moved, the sharp smell of medical antiseptic. Pain came in waves, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes mercifully distant. At one point, he became aware that he was lying in the ship's small medical bay, the autodoc unit humming beside him. Tally was there, her blue fingers making precise adjustments to the machine's settings. "Autodoc," Shaw murmured. "Thought it was broken." Tally glanced at him, her expression softening slightly when she saw he was awake. "Fixed it. While you slept in an ancient place." "Smart," Shaw acknowledged, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rest now," she instructed, administering something through the medical unit. "Body needs healing." As the medication took effect, Shaw felt himself slipping back into darkness. But this time, it was a healing darkness, not the threatening void that had engulfed him earlier. The next time he woke, his mind was clearer. The pain in his side had dulled to a persistent ache, rather than the searing agony he remembered. Nara sat beside his bed, studying a datapad with intense concentration. "What's our status?" Shaw asked, his voice stronger than before. Nara looked up, relief evident in her dark eyes. "We completed all programmed jumps successfully. No sign of pursuit. We're currently in a holding pattern in an uninhabited system, while you recover." "How long have I been out?" 3 days, she replied. "The energy bolt damaged several internal organs, but the autodoc was able to repair most of the damage. You'll need time to fully heal, however." Shaw attempted to sit up, wincing at the protest from his injured side. Nara moved immediately to assist him, her touch gentle but firm. "Tally," he asked, once he was settled in a more comfortable position. Resting. She's been monitoring the ship's systems and your medical status almost continuously. I insisted she get some sleep. Shaw nodded, a wave of gratitude washing over him. You saved us, both of you. We protected our own, Nara said simply, echoing Tally's earlier words. As you protected us. There was something in her gaze, a warmth, a connection, that made Shaw's heart beat faster in a way that had nothing to do with his injury. He looked away, suddenly uncertain. The star map, he said, changing the subject. Did you manage to save the data? Nara smiled, holding up the data pad she had been studying. Complete and intact. I've been analyzing it while you recovered. The coordinates point to a system on the far edge of the Sagittarius Arm. Uncharted territory, but reachable with the Skylark's capabilities. That's our next destination, then, Shaw decided, once I'm back on my feet. You should know, Nara said carefully, that there was a message waiting for us after our final jump. From your contact on Corvus. Shaw frowned. What did it say? The exchange has publicly labeled us as thieves and fugitives. They're offering substantial rewards for information leading to our capture. She paused. They've specifically mentioned the living moss sculpture as stolen property, along with 2 valuable cultural artifacts, meaning Tally and me. Trying to legitimize their hunt, Shaw concluded bitterly. Make it seem like they're the wronged party. Yes, Nara agreed. But there's more. Your contact included information about other exchange trainees who have gone missing in recent months. Apparently, we're not the first to attempt escape. This caught Shaw's attention. Other escapees? Where are they now? Unknown. Most were recaptured, according to official reports. But rumors suggest some may have found sanctuary somewhere in the outer territories. Shaw considered this information. We need to find them. Compare notes. Maybe join forces. My thoughts exactly, Nara nodded. But first, you need to heal, and we need to explore the coordinates from the star map. If the ancient civilization built other outposts like the one on the moon, they might provide safe havens where the exchange cannot find us. Their conversation was interrupted by Tally's arrival. She entered the medical bay silently, her observant eyes quickly assessing Shaw's condition. You're awake, she stated, moving to check the Autodoc's readouts. Good. Healing progresses. Thanks to you, Shaw acknowledged. Nara told me you fixed the Autodoc. Tally shrugged slightly. Simple repairs, recalibration of diagnostic sensors. Don't let her modesty fool you, Nara told Shaw with a hint of pride in her voice. She completely rebuilt the unit's main processor using parts from our emergency supplies. Shaw looked at Tally with newfound appreciation. I'm beginning to think there's nothing you can't fix. A ghost of a smile touched Tally's lips. Some things break beyond repair, she said softly. But not this time. The 3 fell into comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Shaw realized that despite the danger they had faced, or perhaps because of it, the bond between them had deepened. They were no longer merely allies of convenience, but something much more significant. When I'm recovered, he said finally, we'll set course for those coordinates. See what's waiting for us there. Nara nodded, her expression thoughtful. And after that? After that, Shaw replied, meeting her gaze steadily. We start building something that can't be taken away from us. Something that's ours. Freedom, Tally said simply. Yes, Shaw agreed. Freedom. And maybe something more. Recovery took time. Shaw's injury, while no longer life-threatening, required weeks of healing before he could resume his normal activities. During this period, the Skylark remained in its holding pattern, drifting in the empty space between star systems, far from established trade routes or patrol zones. The forced inactivity might have been maddening under different circumstances, but Shaw found himself appreciating the quiet interlude. It gave the 3 of them time to plan, to learn more about each other, to transform from fugitives thrown together by circumstance into a cohesive unit with shared purpose. Tally continued to improve the ship's systems, implementing modifications that increased efficiency and performance. Nera refined her analysis of the star map data, plotting the most secure route to their destination. Shaw, when not resting, shared his knowledge of galactic politics and underground networks, information that would be essential for their survival on the fringes of known space. Their evening gatherings became a cherished ritual. Over simple meals prepared from their diminishing supplies, they would discuss the day's progress, share stories from their past lives, and occasionally allow themselves to imagine a future beyond constant flight. It was during one such evening, nearly 3 weeks after their escape from the moon, that Shaw finally felt strong enough to broach a subject that had been increasingly on his mind. "We need to give the ship a new identity," he announced as they finished their meal. "The Skylark is too well known now. The exchange will have distributed its registry to every port and patrol in the sector." Nera nodded thoughtfully. "Can the identification transponder be reconfigured?" "Yes, but we'll need specialized equipment," Shaw explained. "I know a technician on Helios Station who owes me a favor. It's risky, but less dangerous than continuing to fly with a marked ship." "We also need supplies," Tally pointed out pragmatically. "Food stocks low, medical supplies depleted. Helios it is." "Then," Shaw decided, "we'll approach with caution, use a false docking request, get what we need and leave immediately." The plan was set in motion the following day. The Skylark departed its safe haven, making a carefully calculated approach to Helios Station, a commercial hub known for its relaxed attitude toward regulation and paperwork. Shaw's contact, a Tellurian engineer named Mech, responded to their encrypted communication with surprising enthusiasm. "Shaw, you old scoundrel!" The alien's gravelly voice came through the comm system. "Heard you were dead." "Rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated," Shaw replied dryly. "I need a favor. Mech, the quiet kind." "Naturally," the Tellurian agreed. "Dock at Platform 17, secondary maintenance level. No customs there. I'll meet you personally." The approach to Helios went smoother than Shaw had dared hope. The station's traffic control accepted their false registry without question, and the maintenance level was nearly deserted when they docked. Mech was waiting as promised, his stocky form and ridged carapace unmistakable, even in the dim lighting of the platform. "You look terrible," the Tellurian observed bluntly, as Shaw descended the ramp. His multifaceted eyes shifted to Nera and Tally, who followed close behind. "And you've acquired some interesting company." "This is Nera and Tally," Shaw introduced them. "My partners." Mech's antenna twitched with curiosity, but he asked no questions, a discretion that Shaw had always appreciated about the engineer. "Come," Mech gestured toward a nearby service corridor. "My workshop is secure. We can talk freely there." The Tellurian's workshop was a chaotic space filled with dismantled ship components and electronic equipment in various stages of repair. Despite the apparent disorder, Mech moved through the clutter with purpose, activating privacy screens and security measures as soon as the door closed behind them. "Now," he said, turning to face them. "What kind of trouble are you in this time, Shaw?" "The expensive kind," Shaw admitted. "We need a new transponder identity for the Skylark. Complete package, registry, history, ownership documents." Mech's antennae quivered thoughtfully. "Doable, but not cheap. And may I ask who you're hiding from?" "The Galactic Cultural Exchange," Nera answered, before Shaw could speak. "They're hunting us." The Tellurian's compound eyes widened slightly. "The Exchange? That's ambitious. Even for you, Shaw." "It wasn't exactly planned," Shaw replied with a wry smile. "But here we are." Mech considered them for a long moment, his alien features unreadable to human eyes. Finally, he bobbed his head in what Shaw recognized as a gesture of acceptance. "I'll help. the engineer decided. Not just because you once saved my carapace from those Dravian debt collectors. The exchange has a reputation in certain circles. Not a good one. You know about their practices? Nera asked sharply. Rumors, Mech clarified. Whispers about their cultural trainees and what really happens to them. Nothing concrete enough to challenge such a powerful organization, but enough to make one wonder. He turned to a workbench, crowded with electronic components. The transponder work will take approximately 6 hours. In the meantime, you should resupply. There's a discreet merchant on level 5 who doesn't report inventory transactions to station security. Shaw nodded gratefully. We'll handle that. And Mech, thank you. The Tellurian waved a clawed appendage dismissively. Save your gratitude until you're safely away from Helios. The exchange has eyes everywhere these days. With Mech working on the ship's new identity, Shaw and the sisters made their way to level 5. The discreet merchant turned out to be a wizened Krevlox female who operated a seemingly ordinary supply depot from a cramped storefront. When Shaw mentioned Mech's name, however, the merchant ushered them into a back room where a more extensive inventory was available, without the associated documentation required by station regulations. They purchased essential supplies, food concentrates, medical provisions, power cells for the ship's systems. Tally identified several technical components that would be useful for further improvements to the Skylark, while Nera selected a variety of information crystals containing updated star charts and security protocols for various sectors. As they were completing their transaction, the merchant leaned closer to Shaw, her voice dropping to a whisper. Word of advice, off-worlder. Station security performed an unscheduled sweep of the docking areas this morning. Very unusual. Someone important must be visiting. Shaw felt a chill of apprehension. Exchange representatives. The merchant's wrinkled face revealed nothing, but her silence was answer enough. We need to move, Shaw told the sisters as soon as they were alone. The timing's too coincidental. They made their way back toward the maintenance level, taking service corridors and emergency stairwells to avoid the main thoroughfares. Shaw's recently healed wound protested the exertion, but adrenaline kept him moving. They were one level above their destination when they encountered the first sign of trouble. The distant sound of authoritative voices echoing through the corridor ahead, accompanied by the distinctive hum of scanner devices. Security checkpoint, Shaw whispered, pulling the sisters into a recessed doorway. Probably checking identities against their watch list. Alternate route? Nera suggested, already scanning their surroundings for options. Shaw considered their position. The maintenance shafts? There's an access point 2 sections back. It'll be tight, but it should bypass the checkpoint. They retraced their steps, locating the maintenance access panel, hidden behind a section of decorative wall plating. Shaw removed the panel carefully, revealing a narrow shaft filled with conduits and service tunnels. I'll go first, he said, easing himself into the cramped space. Follow exactly where I go. Some of these conduits carry enough current to fry you if you touch the wrong one. Navigating the maintenance shaft was slow, uncomfortable work. They had to crawl on hands and knees in some sections, squeeze past humming machinery in others. The air was hot and stale, thick with the smell of lubricants and ozone. After what seemed like an eternity of claustrophobic crawling, they reached another access panel. Shaw pressed his ear against it, listening for any sound from the other side, before carefully pushing it open. They emerged into a quiet corridor on the maintenance level, not far from Mech's workshop. Moving cautiously, they approached the engineer's door, which slid open at their arrival. About time, Mech greeted them tensely. Station's crawling with exchange security. They're conducting random inspections of all docked vessels. Is the transponder ready? Shaw asked urgently. Installed and operational, the Tellurian confirmed. Your ship is now the Star Nomad, a private transport vessel with a boring but immaculate service record. The registry traces back to a legitimate shipping company on Nexus Prime that recently went bankrupt. Their records are in enough disarray that No one will question a missing ship for years, if ever. Mech, you're a genius, Shaw said with genuine gratitude. What do we owe you? The engineer's antennae waved dismissively. Consider it an investment in irritating the exchange. Just promise me you'll make good use of it. We intend to, Nara assured him. Thank you for your assistance. Now, go. Mech urged them. I've arranged a power fluctuation in this section that should begin in approximately 3 minutes. It will disrupt the security scanners briefly. Use that window to board your ship and depart. And Shaw, he added as they turned to leave. Try not to get killed this time. Shaw grinned despite the tension. I'll do my best. They made their way to the docking platform where the Skylark, now the Star Nomad, waited. As promised. The station lights flickered precisely 3 minutes later, plunging the area into momentary darkness. They used the confusion to board their ship unobserved. Pre-launch checklist, Shaw instructed, as they rushed to the cockpit. Tally. Monitor station security channels. Nara. Coordinate with traffic control for departure clearance. The sisters moved with practiced efficiency, each assuming their role without hesitation. Shaw marveled briefly at how seamlessly they had become a functioning crew, before focusing on the task of getting them safely away from Helios. Departure clearance granted, Nara reported. Traffic control sounds understaffed, probably responding to the power fluctuation. Perfect. Shaw engaged the ship's thrusters, guiding them away from the docking platform with deliberate care. Nice and easy. We don't want to attract attention. The Star Nomad slipped away from Helios Station without incident, maintaining a casual departure vector until they were safely beyond the station's immediate security zone. Only then did Shaw plot a course for their true destination, the mysterious coordinates from the ancient star map. We're clear, Tally confirmed, scanning the sensor readouts. No pursuit detected. Shaw allowed himself to relax slightly. Set course for the Sagittarius arm. It's time to see what those ancient builders left behind. The journey to the coordinates took nearly 3 weeks. Even with the Star Nomad's enhanced capabilities, they traveled cautiously, avoiding established routes and checkpoints, occasionally stopping at remote outposts to gather information and refresh supplies. During these stops, they began to hear more whispers about other escapees from the exchange program, individuals or small groups who had somehow broken free from their training and disappeared. The stories were fragmented, often contradictory, but they all pointed to a growing resistance against the exchange's practices. We're not alone, Nara observed one evening, as they discussed their findings. Others have recognized the injustice and acted against it, but none seem to have found a permanent safe haven, Shaw pointed out. They're all still running, just like us. Perhaps not for much longer, Tally suggested, gesturing to the navigation display where their destination was highlighted. If ancient place is intact, the implication hung in the air between them, the tantalizing possibility that the coordinates might lead to more than just an archaeological discovery, that they might find a true sanctuary, beyond the reach of the exchange and its agents. As they approached the final leg of their journey, Shaw found himself reflecting on how dramatically his life had changed in the short time since that fateful day in the Lucky Drop. He had gone from a solitary smuggler, concerned only with his own survival, to part of something larger, a makeshift family united by shared purpose and growing affection. The thought both exhilarated and terrified him. Attachment meant vulnerability, something he had avoided for years. And yet, watching Nara and Tally work together at the navigation console, their movements synchronized through long practice, he couldn't imagine returning to his former solitary existence. We're approaching the target system, Nara announced, interrupting his thoughts. Initial scans show 7 planets orbiting a stable yellow star. The third planet appears to be terrestrial, with atmospheric composition similar to Earth standard. Life signs? Shaw asked, moving to join them at the console. Inconclusive at this range, Tally replied. But energy readings present artificial sources. Shaw's pulse quickened. Someone's home! They approached with caution, maintaining a high orbit as they conducted more detailed scans of the planet below. It was a beautiful world, predominantly ocean, with scattered land masses covered in dense vegetation. The energy signatures were concentrated on one of the larger continents, clustered around what appeared to be an extensive complex of structures partially reclaimed by the surrounding jungle. The architecture matches what we saw in the moon outpost, Nera observed, studying the sensor images. Same civilization, but on a much larger scale. And there are definitely people down there, Shaw added, reviewing the life sign readings. Not many, maybe a few dozen, but definitely sentient beings. Descendants of original builders? Tally suggested. Unlikely, given the age of the moon outpost, Nera replied. More probably later arrivals who discovered this place. As we have... Shaw considered their options. We need more information before we make contact. Let's take the ship down, find a secluded landing spot, and do some reconnaissance. They selected a clearing approximately 5 kilometers from the main complex, concealed by the surrounding forest canopy. As the star nomad settled onto the alien soil, Shaw felt a strange sense of homecoming, as if some part of him recognized this place on a level beyond conscious thought. The planet's atmosphere proved breathable, if slightly richer in oxygen than Earth standard. They emerged from the ship cautiously, weapons ready, but not drawn. All senses alert for potential danger. The forest around them was alive with sound and movement, the calls of unseen creatures, the rustling of vegetation in the gentle breeze. The air was heavy with moisture, and the rich scent of growing things. After weeks in the recycled atmosphere of the ship, the natural environment was almost overwhelming in its sensory impact. We should establish a defensive perimeter before nightfall, Shaw suggested, surveying their surroundings. Take shifts for watch. Agreed, Nera nodded. Though I detect no immediate threats. They set up a basic camp beside the ship, deploying sensor beacons to alert them to any approach. As the planet's sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, they gathered around a small heating unit, planning their exploration for the following day. The main complex is approximately 5 kilometers northeast of our position. Nera reviewed the scanner data. The terrain appears passable, though the vegetation is dense in places. We should approach openly, Shaw decided. If these are people who've found sanctuary from the exchange or similar organizations, they'll be suspicious of stealth. Their discussion was interrupted by a soft alert from one of the perimeter sensors. Shaw's hand moved to his weapon as all three turned toward the source of the disturbance. A figure emerged from the trees, humanoid, but clearly not human, with pale golden skin and elongated limbs. It carried no visible weapons and made no threatening moves, simply standing at the edge of their camp, observing them with large, luminous eyes. "Hello," Shaw called, keeping his voice calm and unthreatening. "We come in peace." The figure tilted its head slightly, as if considering his words. Then, to Shaw's surprise, it responded in accented but understandable galactic standard. "We have been expecting you. The Watchers informed us of your arrival." The alien gestured toward the sky. "You seek sanctuary." It wasn't a question, but Shaw answered anyway. "Yes, we're searching for a safe place, beyond the reach of those who hunt us." The alien nodded slowly. "Many come for this reason. Follow me. The elders will wish to speak with you." Shaw exchanged glances with Nera and Tally, a silent communication passing between them. They had come too far to turn back now. "Lead the way," Shaw said, rising to his feet. "We're ready." Their guide led them through the forest with graceful ease, finding paths through the dense undergrowth that were invisible to less experienced eyes. As they walked, Shaw noticed subtle signs of habitation, carefully tended plants among the wild growth, small markers at trail junctions, the occasional glimpse of structures built high among the trees. This place has been inhabited for some time, he murmured to Nera, who walked beside him. These aren't recent refugees. No, she agreed. This is an established community. The question is why they remain hidden, when this world could support a much larger population. Their answer began to take shape as they approached the main complex. What had appeared from orbit to be a cluster of ruins revealed itself as a carefully maintained balance between ancient structures and living forest. The massive stone buildings, similar in design to those they had found on the moon, had been integrated into the ecosystem rather than dominating it. Vegetation grew along walls and across terraces. Water flowed through channels that might once have been streets, and additional structures had been built among the trees surrounding the original complex. Most striking, however, was the diversity of the inhabitants. As they entered what appeared to be a central gathering area, Shaw and the sisters found themselves surrounded by beings from at least a dozen different species, some familiar, others completely unknown to them. All moved with the easy familiarity of those who had lived together for years, perhaps generations. Their guide led them to a circular structure at the center of the complex. Inside, seated around a simple stone table, were 5 individuals, the elders, presumably. They varied in species and apparent age, but all regarded the newcomers with the same penetrating attention. "Welcome to Haven," said one, a human woman with silver hair and weathered features. "I am Serena, first elder of this community. These are my colleagues." She gestured to the others around the table, a Ventaxian, a being that might have been diary, but for its deeper blue coloration, and 2 others of species Shaw didn't recognize. "Thank you for receiving us," Shaw replied, instinctively taking on the role of spokesperson. "I'm Shaw. These are my partners, Nera and Tally." The diary-like elder leaned forward, studying the sisters with evident interest. "You are from the exchange program," they observed. "Recently escaped, yes?" Nera nodded, surprise evident in her expression. "How did you know?" "Because I, too, was trained by the exchange," the elder replied. "Many cycles ago. The marks of their conditioning are recognizable to those who have experienced it." Shaw felt Tally shift closer to him, a subtle movement that he understood as both seeking reassurance and offering protection. The gesture touched him deeply. "You've found others like them?" he asked. "Other escapees?" Serena nodded. Haven was established precisely for this purpose, to provide sanctuary for those fleeing exploitation and control. Some, like your companions, escaped from the exchange. Others fled different forms of bondage or persecution. All found their way here, guided by fragments of ancient knowledge or desperate hope. "How have you remained hidden?" Nera asked. "The exchange has extensive resources for tracking fugitives. The ancient builders of this place were masters of concealment," explained the Ventaxian elder. "The entire planet is surrounded by a network of satellites that distort long-range scans and redirect approaching vessels unless they know the exact coordinates. We maintain and expand the system, ensuring our continued safety." "And the community?" Shaw inquired, looking around at the diverse group of beings who had gathered to observe the newcomers. "How does it function?" "We share resources and knowledge," Serena replied. "Each contributes according to their abilities and experiences. We have no formal hierarchy beyond the Council of Elders, who serve as advisors rather than rulers." She smiled slightly. "It is not always harmonious. Bringing together beings from so many different cultures ensures frequent misunderstandings. But we work through these challenges together." Shaw felt something tighten in his chest, a longing he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge until this moment. The possibility of belonging somewhere, of building something lasting instead of constantly running. "Can we stay?" Tally asked suddenly, her usually reserved voice clear and direct. "Become part of Haven?" The elders exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Serena spoke again. Haven is open to all who seek freedom and are willing to contribute to our community. But there is a condition, a commitment to help others find their way here, to extend the sanctuary to those who need it most. You want us to rescue others from the exchange, Nara concluded. Not immediately, the diary-like elder clarified. You are too recently escaped. The risk would be too great. But eventually, yes, with your knowledge of their operations, you could help guide others to freedom. Shah looked at Nara and Tally. Seeing in their expressions the same mix of hope and uncertainty he felt himself. They had found a safe haven, but accepting it meant committing to a cause larger than themselves, becoming part of a resistance they hadn't known existed until now. We need to discuss this, he told the elders. It's a significant decision. Serena nodded, understanding. Of course. You will be given quarters for the night. Rest, consider our offer, and we will speak again tomorrow. Their temporary accommodation was a small structure, built into the living rock of the ancient complex. A single room with simple sleeping platforms and a view of the forest canopy through an open terrace. As night fell over Haven, they sat together on the terrace, watching unfamiliar stars appear in the alien sky. What do you think? Shah asked finally, breaking the contemplative silence. It feels right, Nara said softly. This place, these people, they understand what we've experienced in a way no one else could. Tally nodded agreement. Purpose here, meaning? Shah considered their words, trying to articulate his own conflicted feelings. It would mean putting down roots, committing to something permanent. I haven't done that well, ever. Are you reluctant? Nara asked, studying his face in the dim light. Terrified, Shah admitted with a rueful smile, but also hopeful, for the first time in years. Tally's hand found his in the darkness, a silent gesture of support that said more than words ever could. On his other side, Nara moved closer, her warmth a comforting presence in the cool night air. We decide together, she said quietly, as we have since the beginning. In that moment, surrounded by the night sounds of an alien forest and the steady presence of the two beings who had become more important to him than he had ever thought possible. Shah knew what his answer would be. Together, he agreed. Here. The decision, once made, brought with it a profound sense of rightness. When they met with the elders the following morning, their acceptance of Haven's offer was unified and confident. The process of integration into the community began immediately. They were assigned a more permanent dwelling, a structure built partly into an ancient wall and partly among the branches of a massive tree. Other residents helped them establish their new home, bringing furnishings, tools, and welcome gifts. Shah was surprised by how quickly they were accepted, not as outsiders or refugees, but as valuable new members of Haven. His knowledge of galactic trade routes and smuggling techniques was welcomed by those responsible for the community's limited but essential contact with the outside world. Nara's diplomatic training and cultural expertise made her a natural mediator in the diverse community. Tally's technical skills were perhaps the most immediately valuable, as she joined the team responsible for maintaining Haven's protective systems. Days became weeks, and weeks became months. The Star Nomad remained operational, hidden beneath a canopy of engineered vegetation that could be retracted when needed. They began to venture out occasionally, careful missions to nearby systems for supplies or information, always returning to the sanctuary that had become their home. One evening, nearly 6 months after their arrival, Shah stood on the highest terrace of their dwelling, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. He heard soft footsteps behind him and turned to see Nara approaching, her white markings seeming to glow in the fading light. The council has asked if we're ready, she said without preamble. There's a training facility in the Proxima sector. 4 young Ventaxians, Recently selected for the exchange program. Shaw nodded slowly. The moment they had known would come had arrived. What do you think? I think we're ready, Nara replied, a quiet confidence in her voice. The Star Nomad is fully upgraded. Our identities are secure, and we have Haven's resources behind us now. And Tally? Already planning the extraction, Nara smiled. She's been developing a modified EMP device that can disable the facility's security systems without harming the trainees. Shaw turned back to the sunset, considering. The risk would be significant, their first direct challenge to the exchange's operations. But the reward. When do we leave? He asked. 3 days, Nara replied. Time enough to prepare properly. Shaw nodded again. Decision made. Then we'd better get started. As the light faded from the sky, they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear. So much had changed since that impulsive moment in a dingy bar on Zadric Station. What had begun as a simple act of decency, trading a drink for 2 lives, had transformed into something far more profound. A family, a home, a purpose. Whatever dangers awaited them in the days ahead, Shaw knew they would face them together. And at the end of each mission, no matter how difficult, they would return to Haven, to the life they were building among the ancient stones and living forest of their chosen home. For the first time in his life, Shaw was no longer running from something. He was running towards something instead, toward a future worth fighting for, alongside the 2 beings who had become the center of his world. The stars above Haven seemed to shine with particular brightness that night, as if in approval of the path they had chosen. Together, they would bring others to this sanctuary. Together, they would continue the work of building something that could not be taken away, something that was truly their own. Together, they had found home,